Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very senior and respected branding and marketing expert and an author from Washington, D.C., USA, Mr. Gal Borenstein. Gal, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Gal is the Chief Executive Officer of the Borenstein Group, which is a technology focused B2B and B2G branding and marketing agency. He's also an author of a book titled Don't Believe the Hype, and we'll talk about the book as well as two other books. So, Gal, let's get straight to the work you're doing at the Borenstein Group. What inspired you to start the group over 30 years ago, and what was your vision at that time?
It's a long story, but I'll make it short. I started the Borenstein Group after graduating with a techno MBA, and only to find out that nobody was hiring.
Mm-hmm.
And I was kind of an odd duck in the sense that I knew how to write,
Mm-hmm.
I knew marketing, but technology companies did not have marketing departments.
Mm-hmm.
And if they did, they had one person or two persons that did a customer newsletter or
Mm-hmm.
maintained their website at the time, which had 3 pages on it. And it basically coalesced with the economic changes that happened where the technology revolution in the 1990s basically
Yeah.
created a whole new market where small companies and mid-sized companies became the major employers instead of the old school where you had IBM, Microsoft, and a few more players that were kind of monopolies, and you couldn't
Mm-hmm.
really have the quality for the smaller companies to be successful. So I set the company on two principles. Number one, we're going to be using my background in technology, telecommunications,
Mm-hmm.
software, and understanding what these people are all about.
Mm-hmm.
And the second is helping engineers that are known for their linear and logical thinking think out of the box and create some circular thinking where you have an opportunity to really tell your story, create a narrative, and a brand.
Mm-hmm.
And over the past 30 years, our tagline has never changed,
Mm-hmm.
which is making creativity a science. Well, when you think about it, creativity is very far from science because creativity is somebody has a great idea.
Correct.
Uh, and science is somebody has a great idea that can be repeated, predictable to produce outcomes that everybody can scale.
Mm.
And that's the book definition of science. So we basically always looked at it as what's the ROI? What's the reason that we're doing, for example, in the old days, direct mail? And
Mm-hmm.
everybody says 3% response rate is the right number because that's the average. Well,
Mm.
that's not the average if you need something for a specific company with a specific line of business. So over the years, really, we help educate clients become trusted advisors
Mm-hmm.
and very much been a non-agency agency in the sense that most agencies respectfully
Mm.
have great creative geniuses, but if you can't take that and scale it, companies don't grow. And I'm
Correct.
very proud that many of our clients have grown and rebranded themselves with us 3 to 5 times.
Mm.
And every time it was a different reason, growth, expansion, embedded base, but it's all about how do you take something and make it bigger and trust it?
Fascinating. So tell me, what differentiates a trusted brand from a loud brand?
That's a very interesting question, and I appreciate it. Uh, when you think about a trusted brand, it's very much connected to what I consider one of the smartest things that any business person
Mm.
said, which was Jeff Bezos from Amazon,
Mm-hmm.
was asked, "What is branding?" And his answer was, "It's what people think about you when you're not in the room."
Mm.
And that really kind of sparked something in me to say, wait a minute, if you're a company and people are not talking about you in the way that you think they should,
Mm.
they don't trust the company,
Correct.
or your narrative is completely um, off the bottom line and where it needs to be.
Mm.
A loud brand is something that appears to be making a lot of noise,
Hmm.
and in that noise that they're making, nobody's really listening.
Yeah.
So it's like a boombox in a
Mm.
very small room that creates opportunities for people to uh, create advertising campaigns, PR campaigns, advertising on social media. But at the end of the day, if this is not something that is being received well
Mm.
internally and externally, it fails. And
Mm.
loud brands typically don't succeed in the long term. They might have a short game, like to be acquired or to
Mm.
be, um, exposed enough so somebody will invest in them. But that's not really how
Mm.
most of the economy works.
Correct.
Companies need to have a trusted brand because
Correct.
that's the long game.
Mm. But in today's day and age, how has the concept of digital trust reshaped your agency's approach to branding?
It's been overwhelming at the beginning because pre-COVID and pre um, video conferencing, that used to be something that was known for having studies that
Mm.
said most people do not want to be on camera because they're shy, they don't like to be in a video, they don't want
Mm.
people to see what they're wearing. And COVID happened, and suddenly everybody was forced to communicate through Zoom, through Microsoft Meetings, through
Mm.
Google Video. And what transpired is all the human traits of having a trusted conversation, which would include us going to dinner or lunch and
Mm.
discussing your company's requirements, having the opportunity to kind of take down the guards that typically happen when two people meet, and in that case, two companies meet. And most importantly, uh, that overwhelming feeling
Mm.
translated it into an environment where the single most important thing was you do not own your narrative as a company anymore.
Mm.
When you think about a brand, it could be any company that you think about, whether it's AT&T or Verizon, or anybody that makes anything that is a substance. You find very often that they might have a tagline or a mantra, if you will, that says, "We are the best, we are the fastest, we are the highly qualified. The numbers show that what we do works better than the other guys."
Mm.
But then you take their message out and you find out that in pre-COVID, nobody basically had the opportunity to really get back to you or talk about you unless you were pushing and investing in advertising and marketing and a lot of PR. But there was no way to measure it or
Correct.
to actually get the resonance
Yeah.
other than two angry customers, right?
Mm.
Which always exist, and
Correct.
the other two that always complain.
Correct.
But what happened is a new generation was created of the fact that you don't control your narrative
Mm.
because there's social media,
Mm.
there are employee review sites, there are product review sites, and there's Google. And with the AI becoming part of the search engine,
Hmm.
what we're facing is a crisis in digital trust for any message that we're trying to get out, because
Mm.
whatever we're saying, if it doesn't align with what somebody said on Glassdoor as an employee of the company. So, for example, the company tried to recruit 100 engineers, and they have a saying, we're the best culture in the world, corporate
Mm.
culture in the world. And then you go to the Glassdoor and there's like 50 reviews that are very negative and saying management is disconnected from the people. The values that they're talking about don't show up. We're the lowest paid people in the industry. This company sucks, as the kids would say.
Correct.
And then that is as important as the $2 or $3 million that you might invest in advertising.
Yeah.
So if you don't align and synchronize what people are saying about your company in all the channels of communications, and then you don't make sure that the narrative that you're trying to get out is actually focused on that sync, it means that you might have a situation where you have the best message in the world, but the company believes in something else. The employees of the company internally believe in something else. So there's disconnect between CEO and the plant engineers, if you will. And if you don't take care of that, of the internal communications, which could be financial communication, for example, the company is doing well or the company is not doing well, we know that the corporate mantra is, just say enough, don't say too much. But in reality, that is your brand.
Correct.
If you're a CEO of a company or a CFO or chief human resource officer, it doesn't matter which executive position you're in. If you don't have transparency in your company, people don't believe you, or they might give you the benefit of the doubt in Q1, but it's not a long-term thing. So connecting the idea that in the past we had to basically spend money on advertising and marketing and branding, which still needs to be done.
Yeah.
But not checking that it's believable, incredible within the company, and then that it has an authentic feeling. If you go down to the, the junior person in the plant or software engineer, they say it's BS. And then you go out with the message, the market won't believe you. So it has to do with authenticity and transparency, not just the glitz and glamour that people get enamored with. So that's really kind of the dissertation, if you will, in a minute, to say digital trust is about the fact that you don't control your narrative anymore.
Correct. Well said.
That your narrative has to be authentic, pre-tested with your customers and your prospects before it becomes your headline.
Correct.
And then making sure that you have something that is called a trust index, which is something that I talked about in my book, which is called the Guardian framework.
I'm just coming to that. In fact, I was going to ask you in your book, Don't Believe the Hype, you talk about the Guardian Digital Trust Framework. Tell me, how can it help brands build resilience in the AI age?
Well, the framework that I created that's called the Guardian really refers to 3 or 4 major areas of responsibility that a corporation with executive management could look at it and say, this is together something that really makes a difference. So the first is we need to build a trust index between the company and its employees. It's almost like a Magna Carta or a kind of a written agreement that is both verbal and nonverbal to make sure that every department that has a major responsibility starts with maybe a survey of employees that says, do you believe that we're the smartest or the fastest or whatever is the brand trait that you're looking for? And then that's the benchmark. And then look now to add, for example, how did they look at the chief financial officer? How did they look at the CEO? How do you look at the human resource officer? And then test it against the marketplace and see what people on the outside are saying. In the old days, we called the water cooler. Now the water cooler is social media. It's the review sites. It's all the places where you get the feedback. So if you started by saying, we need a trust index to basically say what we believe in is a 6 out of 10. Our goal is to make the 6 into an 8 within a year with certain activities. The second one in that role of protecting your brand is really kind of the word transparency. Is your company hiding secrets from employees and from customers? When there's a defect, for example, or a recall of if it was a car manufacturer, and they basically don't advertise it until they're forced to by the government because there are safety rules and you have to do that, your brand is getting hurt because you did not came first with the story, and the story is ahead of you instead of the other way around, which is you need to be ahead of the story.
Correct.
Other kind of elements are authenticity, making sure that we're speaking in the customer's language. It's very often something that happens in many technology companies, especially. We call products X, Y, and Z.3 instead of giving it a name that explains what the product does or the name really is associated with the value proposition. And that's the language of the customer. If you don't understand how to do that and you don't create mechanisms between the marketing department and the operations department and the technology department, you're likely to not have a trusted message that can go across. So doing that is very critical to the success of building that trust. And then going back to the trust index and think about it as another element. So we're talking about transparency, authenticity, being able to create a believable message that is being tested. And then how do we communicate on social media, externally, on LinkedIn, on all these places where we can build thought leadership, but in an authentic manner? That really is the core. And just to wrap it up, the most important part in this is most people understand any of those elements, but they don't tend to understand that we don't live in a bubble. So if you're the CEO and you're being very successful, it doesn't mean your company is going to be successful. The CEO is the brand. The internal communication is the brand. The delivery of the technician is the brand. And if you use that framework, it really kind of gives you the opportunity to ask the tough questions, put on the table the things that don't work, which every company has, and then measure it, create a benchmark, ask the right questions, and then come back to it and continuously put that as part of the executive management agenda.
Yeah. Well said. Gal, your book breaks trust strategy into build, protect, and measure. How should leaders balance these three elements?
That is really kind of an individual answer for most CEOs and leaders that we've been working with, where there's really not one way of doing it. But if you hit those three elements that were described, what wins at the end of the day is look at your company's culture and looks at what are the top promises that you're making. Then make sure that they all connect with each other and are symbiotic in nature. So if you do one of the three, that's okay. But if you don't basically see how and what is the impact, that's where people lose a lot of the credibility.
Thank you. Your framework also connects trust to AI, data ethics, and governance. What's the biggest risk if companies ignore this connection?
That's a very good point as part of the Guardian model of trust. What people are doing right now, everybody is kind of on that wave of innovation. And for most businesses and for most leaders in companies, I'm talking about the C-suite, they see AI as one of two things. It's either going to replace me or displace me if you're an executive, or it's a way to grow and scale in words like 10x or 10.20, whatever it is. That's really kind of what's going on. But in reality, what we see every day is that when people say, well, we need to look like we're innovative, they adopt AI systems or create agents of AI, or we call them the bots, that might solve a problem, but because you did not train it to think the way you need to think, and you just put it like on ChatGPT, tell me what's the standard in data governance. What can happen in a company like that? It could be that your agent becomes rogue and 10x is the messages that you're supposed to get out with no one watching, and actually knowing that they pissed off a bunch of customers. And I can tell you personally that an example of it would be that I get obviously a lot of solicitations from a lot of solutions for marketing and branding, and almost like half of them that I get via email as an invitation to a discussion, it's missing my name. It says Mr. Dear Mr. Nothing.
Correct.
We would like to help you. And if you multiply it times 3,000 emails that are going out every day, and there's no control, there's no regulation, and there's no feeding of your cultural DNA, what you're doing essentially is you're adapting things too fast.
Correct.
So what I always tell people is it's nice to have a new technology, and definitely this is a revolutionary point in time, but it's no different than when we used to say, when we get a call from a prospect in marketing, we should respond within 12 hours or 24 hours as the standard, and not next week. When there was voicemail technology, people resisted it because they didn't want an extra message that they had to deal with and then try to play tag to actually have a conversation. So in one respect, AI is not different than every other revolution that we had, which was a fax machine, a voicemail, a typewriter that turns into a PC. They're all big, but at 2-3 years down the road, they basically hit the bell curve. And then what is likely to happen is people will find out that you can't automate a problem and then automate a solution.
Well said.
In other words, if you are looking to solve a problem, or you're looking to basically make it faster, make it produce a lot more velocity, which is what most AI is touting, you could be automating a problem and actually maxing out your presence in the market by making mistakes that cost years in reputation. So that is really kind of a lot of the focus that in marketing strategies and go-to-market strategy that we put together for clients. We say, did you test it? Did you notice any kind of standard deviations from the norm? And then connecting the dots so you're able to really check what it is that you're trying to accomplish, but then test it again, and test it after the campaign went out. And it could be an email, it could be CRM, it could be any of ABM, anything that basically is on the mind of people.
Correct. Well said. Time for 2 more questions for you. What role do you see for ethics and human empathy in AI-driven marketing and decision-making?
I think it's a great opportunity for all of us that are managing or supervising or directing things that are of global scale, if you will. And the realization that we came to see very quickly is that the robot or the AI agent can be faster than you, can be more productive than you, but it doesn't have a heart and it doesn't have clinical psychology
Correct.
embedded into what it is that you're doing. So the outcome of that is you have legs and hands that are running really fast, but you also have a brain, but that brain has no personality. It doesn't feel anything.
Correct.
It doesn't care whether emotional intelligence is the most important part, whether you're in sales and in marketing and in branding and in advertising. What's the single most important thing is you make people feel something that creates empathy. If there's no empathy or there's no trust that is expressed through I like it, I love it, and you're relying on a bot to do so, you are hurting your business versus helping your business. And we find that companies that actually say, yeah, it's there to assist.
Amazing.
That works. But if not, empathy is the definition of being able to feel for each other and be kind and be responsible. Don't make promises that you can't keep.
Correct.
AI can't do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's following our instruction.
Correct. Absolutely. And Gail, my last question for you. If you were to summarize the core message of Don't Believe the Hype in one sentence, what would you want every leader or every marketer to remember?
The three words that is the title of the book is really kind of don't believe the hype. The hype is really what is the noise or the loud noise that is being made in the marketplace that AI is going to save you, AI is going to help you grow. But in reality, your brand is connected to how AI is being used and then portrays your company as a successful, trusted brand or not. So very quick example again would be you make a value proposition and a tagline for the company, and then you go outside and people have no regard to it or don't like it, but you didn't believe that it doesn't work. You did not look at your social media. You did not get customer feedback, voice of the customer, voice of the prospects, voice of the vendors that you're working with.
Yeah.
That's what it's about.
Correct. And on that note, I just want to say, Gail, what a fascinating conversation this has been. I've been in marketing for 4.5 decades. And, some of the points that you brought out were so powerful. No matter what the technology is, and we've seen many, many different types of technology, which all seem to say jobs will be lost, the technology will be taking over. And the message that's coming out loud and clear from you is that the brand has values of its own. The brand lives on its own, and everything that we are getting from any kind of technology is just an additional support function for the brand. Thank you again for speaking to me, and good luck to you.
Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.